The first sign that the palace was lying came from the chandeliers. At dawn, the crystal droplets began to ring, not from wind, not from footsteps, but as if an invisible finger had plucked every hanging prism at once. The sound was sweet and wrong, like laughter in an empty room. Princess Brunhilde paused mid-step, feeling it vibrate through the marble and into her bones. Somewhere beyond the walls, something enormous had arrived. Brunhilde didn't fear danger. She feared cages, golden ones most of all. That morning, the throne hall filled with princes, each sparkling like a coin freshly minted. They came wrapped in velvet and certainty, holding out gifts as if love could be weighed and purchased. One offered her a necklace of ocean pearls. Another promised a private tower where no one would bother her again, as if freedom meant isolation behind stone. Brunhilde smiled like she'd been trained to smile. But her gaze kept sliding toward the open archway at the end of the hall, the sliver of outside sky, pale and inviting, the distant roads that did not end in gates. When the last prince finished listing his riches, Brunhilde stood. "I don't want treasure," she said, voice calm enough to cut. "I want a life that belongs to me." The hall chilled. The princes blinked, confused, like men hearing a language they'd never bothered to learn. Then a new arrival stepped through the doors, no glitter, no parade, just travel dust on boots and wind in dark hair. Prince Heinrich of the Har Mountains bowed once. Not low. Not proud. Honest. "I heard you wanted freedom," he said. "So I didn't bring chains disguised as gold." Brunhilde's breath caught, because his eyes didn't look at her like a prize. They looked like a question. Who are you when no one is watching? He spoke of mountain paths, cold air that burned your lungs clean, and homes where doors stayed unlocked unless you asked otherwise. His words weren't poetry. They were permission. Something in Brunhilde's chest, something long-starved, lifted its head. They met again in gardens, then libraries, then quiet corridors where guards pretended not to listen. Heinrich taught her how to read clouds for storms. Brunhilde taught him how to read rooms for lies. With him, she didn't feel owned. She felt chosen. And then, just when the palace began to feel breathable, another sound came. A heavy boom outside the walls, like the earth dropping a hammer. Then another. Servants froze. Doves exploded from rooftops. The chandeliers rang again, this time violently, as if trying to warn everyone at once. Brunhilde ran to the balcony. A shadow stood beyond the gates. Not a man's shadow. A giant's. He was taller than the outer towers, wrapped in fur stitched with bone, with hair like frost and eyes the cold blue of old ice. Around his neck hung a chain of thick golden rings, trophies, clinking softly as he moved. Behind him, stamping the road into dust, stood a stallion so black it seemed to drink sunlight. Its mane drifted like smoke. Its eyes glowed faintly, watching the palace as if it had memorized every exit. The giant lifted a twisted golden circlet in his palm, shaped like a wedding crown, but sharp, cruel, hungry. His voice rolled over the city like thunder in a closed room. "Bride." Brunhilde didn't step back. Heinrich reached her side, jaw tight. "His name is Odo," he murmured. "Northern Wastes. He doesn't court, he claims." Odo pointed at the palace balcony again, and Brunhilde felt it, like a hook catching in the ribs. Not love. Not destiny. Ownership. The king gathered courage the way a drowning man grabs air. He ordered gates shut, spears raised, banners flown. But the giant only smiled, wide, confident, patient. That smile said, "You can lock your doors. I have all the time in the world." By evening, Odo sent terms. Not negotiations. Terms. A wedding feast by sunrise. Brunhilde seated at his side. A public crowning. a vow spoken whether she wanted it or not. The king's face collapsed into fear. Advisors argued. Guards pledged their lives. But Brunhilde saw the truth in everyone's eyes. They were already deciding how to hand her over and call it peace. Heinrich found her in the corridor outside the chapel, where stained glass saints watched silently. "We can run," he whispered. Brunhilde stared at the candle flames. If she ran alone, she might survive. If she ran with Heinrich, she might drag him into the monster's jaws. But love wasn't a cage either. Love was a choice you made even when it terrified you. Odo's laughter echoed faintly from somewhere outside, carried by the wind like a dare. Brunhilde turned to Heinrich. "If we run," she said, "we don't run like thieves. We run like storms." Heinrich's eyes softened. "Then we need a way out that a giant can't close." That night, they met in the courtyard shadows, where Odo's horses were tethered, enchanted beasts stolen from ancient magic. One mare stood apart, swift brown coat, amber eyes, hooves that struck sparks against stone. She watched Brunhilde like she recognized her hunger. Heinrich slipped a silver ring from his finger and pressed it into Brunhilde's palm. A simple band etched with a mountain peak. "This will lead you home," he said. "If we get separated, follow the ring." Brunhilde's throat tightened. "Then don't get separated." From beyond the wall came Shadowrunner's snort, low and satisfied, as if the stallion had heard every word. Brunhilde curled her fingers around the ring. At sunrise, the palace would host a wedding feast. And Brunhilde would walk into it smiling. Because the most dangerous traps are the ones that look like celebrations. The palace dressed itself like it was proud. Fresh banners. Polished floors. Tables bent under roasted meat and sugared fruit. Musicians tuned trembling strings. Servants moved with faces too tight to be human. Odo wanted a feast, and the king gave him one, because fear is excellent at pretending it's diplomacy. Brunhilde wore white silk that felt like surrender. Her hair was braided with pearls like tiny handcuffs. She walked into the grand hall with her chin lifted, not because she was unafraid, but because she refused to look small in her own story. Odo arrived like winter crashing through a door. Stones scraped as he ducked beneath the archway. The hall shrank around him. His golden rings clinked, soft, casual, as if he carried trophies the way other men carried keys. Shadowrunner remained in the open doorway behind him, half inside, half outside. The stallion's smoke-black head drifted low, nostrils flaring. Its gaze slid over every guest, every guard, every exit, then settled on Brunhilde like a nail driven deep. Odo lifted the twisted wedding crown. "My bride," he rumbled, reaching upward. Brunhilde did not step away. She stepped closer. Because the heart of a trap is proximity. The feast began. Odo devoured food like a conqueror, hands tearing meat, goblet sloshing wine. He demanded Brunhilde sit at his side. She did, letting her calmness become a weapon. Heinrich moved through the hall like a shadow among servants, cloak low, posture loose. He was unarmed. Their weapon was timing. Every few minutes, the danger sharpened. A guard's eyes narrowed at Heinrich's unfamiliar boots. A noble's whisper rose, "Is the mountain prince here?" Shadowrunner stomped, and torches flickered as if afraid. Brunhilde kept smiling. Odo bragged about the northern wastes, about how kingdoms bowed or broke. He spoke of women as prizes and fear as proof of power. Brunhilde listened like a perfect princess, while her mind counted steps to the courtyard door, counted guards, counted the exact moment Odo would be too drunk on attention to notice a theft. Then Odo grinned and snapped his fingers. Servants dragged in gifts, crowns, rings, gems. He tossed them onto the table like bones. Choose, he said. Pick the treasure you like most. I'll let you wear it. Brynhilda looked at the glitter and felt nothing. Instead, she let her fingers drift toward the chain of golden rings around Odo's neck. So many rings, she said lightly. Why? Odo puffed with pride. Trophies. From kings who begged. From warriors who broke. Brynhilda's hand slid under the chain, lifting it just enough to make the rings clink loudly, bright and ringing. Heads turned. The room's attention snapped to her and Odo like a rope pulled tight. That was the signal. Across the hall, Heinrich moved, fast, silent, slipping through the side door to the courtyard where the enchanted horses waited. Brynhilda kept Odo's ego inflated like a balloon. You must be feared everywhere, she murmured, eyes soft. You must feel unstoppable. Odo leaned closer, intoxicated by being worshipped. I am. Outside, Heinrich reached the tether lines. The brown mare watched him approach, ears flicking, muscles coiled. Heinrich held up his silver ring's twin, his hand empty now, but he breathed the mountain vow into the mare's mane, a promise older than crowns: run free. Choose the brave. The mare snorted, then lowered her head as if agreeing. Inside the hall, Odo stood, lifting the twisted crown. Time, he growled. Kneel. Silence slammed down. Brynhilda did not kneel. I won't be claimed, she said. Odo's eyes narrowed, ice cracking. You don't refuse me. Brynhilda rose, her chair scraping stone. She felt fear. But beneath it, something fiercer, the knowledge that her life was hers. In the doorway, Shadowrunner lifted its head and screamed, a sound like metal tearing. At that exact moment, hooves thundered in the courtyard. Heinrich burst back through the side door, the brown mare surging behind him like a living storm. He lifted his hand, empty ring finger gleaming, and Brynhilda understood, now. She ran. Not a princess fleeing. A storm choosing its direction. Guards shouted. Nobles gasped. The king's voice broke in horror. Odo roared, and the hall shook as if the building itself flinched. Brynhilda reached the courtyard. The mare lowered her shoulder just enough. Brynhilda grabbed mane and leapt up, clean, decisive, unstoppable. Heinrich slapped the mare's flank. Go! The mare launched forward, sparks snapping from stone. They tore through the gates. Behind them, Odo's roar became pure rage. And Shadowrunner, stallion of smoke in pursuit, charged after them. The wedding feast had been a trap. But Brynhilda had turned it into a door.